I'm going to step you through an example that's going to show two different things. It's going to show what we call an indefinite loop, and then we're going to show interactive input. So this is the first time that we've done interactive input. And so first of all, in order to get interactive input, we're going to pull in input from the keyboard. And so we're going to create use what's called a scanner. And think of the scanner as it's constantly scanning it's constantly scanning for input from the keyboard. And so we have to import, we have to add this line of code right here in order to get interactive input, because we're going to create what's called a scanner object. So it's used for interactive input. And when you're working in Jdoodle, before I forget, you have to turn this interactive mode on. So typically we've had that off. You need to turn that mode on. And then we go ahead and start our regular class. And then I've made a few switch ups with a do while loop just to show you some other things that we could do. I've created three variables in this particular example. I've created a start and setting that start to an initial value of 0. That is not exactly our initialization, and I'll explain that in just a moment. I have a variable for stopping, and I have a counting variable. So my counting variable is the variable that's going to basically control my loop. If we take a look down here, my counter variable is my loop control variable. And so I'm going to use that in order to execute or not execute the loop. So it's my loop control variable is what we call that. Then I'm going to have a scanner object created, and since I'm bringing it in from the keyboard, that's from the system.in. It's how I'm going to get that data. I have to create a new scanner. I can name it whatever I want, but I'm just going to name it in. I have to give a prompt, and so this is for user friendliness. I create a prompt for the user so the user knows what they want to enter. And then I'm going to use in.nextInt because I'm working with integers. That's going to pull in the next integer that I type into the keyboard, and I'm going to assign that to my stopping value. So basically I'm going to have you, the user, input a number between 10 and 100, and that's going to be my stopping control on my loop. And so down here you're going to see my guard is going to say I want to execute this loop as long as the counter is less than or equal to stop. So as long as that's going to be true, if the counter is smaller than stop, then I'm going to execute the loop. The other thing is that I am going to then start my loop with an initialization. And here my initialization is that I'm going to take my counting variable and assign it my starting value, which happens to be 0. And then I'm going to print the loop control like we had done before. We printed the counting variable, etc. So let's see how this is going to execute. If I click execute, I should get a prompt on my screen that it wants me to enter a number between 10 and 100. So I'm going to say 20. And then I press enter on my keyboard and the loop will hopefully execute. And it does. It prints the numbers from 0 through 20, prints that it got outside the loop, etc. If I hit execute again, it's going to again prompt me. If I say I'm going to enter 40, and then if you notice it keeps executing, keeps running, and then it's going, oops, I have to press enter, and then it's going to print all the numbers from 1 through 40. Now that one takes just a little bit of time to process, but there it is. It actually is printing, that's kind of interesting because it actually went off the screen. See, it printed this 0, 1, 2, and then 3, 4. I don't know why it's on a different line. I'm going to run that again. Something weird kind of happened. If I enter 40, now it prints the way that it should. And so it's executing a loop. I'm getting interactive input, and I don't know how many times that's going to execute because me as the user, I actually don't know that I'm having the loop start at 0. You could change the starting value to start at 20. And then you could have them enter. Now that would be going to blow up our loop if I enter something less than 10. So I should probably make my prompt say enter a number between. And here's where if I change this value, I now have to change hard code. You know, this was hard coded in. It would be better if I could actually make that a variable and say enter a number between, and I put in the variable start plus quote and 100. So now this way, if I execute the code and I say, it says now enter a number between 20 and 100, so I could enter 40, and it's going to count from 20 all the way through 40. Now it happens to be printing that counting variable, the 40 first, and I don't, where's that 40 printing? I don't know why it's printing that 40. So somewhere I have it printing 40, and I don't know why. Enter a number between 20 and 100. It does that. We do next line, and I hit 40. I'm going to hit execute again and see if that runs. If I hit 40, press enter. Oh, silly me. That's actually my input, so I wasn't paying attention. So there's actually a way to kind of prevent that type of a mistake, because typically when you're inputting stuff, a lot of times you'll see that input here at the end of the line. So rather than doing a print line, I could do a print, and then I could run the code. If I do a print statement and I run the code, and I want to put a space here at the end, then hit execute, now my cursor will stay on the end of that line, and if I type in 40, I won't confuse it with some other type of output that's on my screen. So that makes the program a little bit more user-friendly. So you now have created interactive input, where you can ask the user to input a value. We've also changed up the code here, so I could actually make my starting value anything I want. I'm going to exclude the fact that I know that I can't go over 100, so now it says input a number between 40 and 100. So if I enter 50, then it goes 40 to 50, etc. And we learned a little bit how to make a prompt and make it a little bit more user-friendly by using a print instead of a print line. And then we used the next int on the scanner object. The scanner object does have a whole bunch of other inputs, but for right now we are inputting an integer, so we use in.nextInt. So that wraps up this video. Good luck.